In today's session, we are honored to have with us Mr. Scott Dunn, Vice President for Southeast Asia at AECOM, as well as past chair of ULI Singapore, Mr. Kenneth Wong, Director of Local Planning at the Land Transport Authority. We also have Mr. Mark Shaw, Chairman of the Orchard Road Business Association, Ms. Mizah Rahman, co-founder of Participate in Design, and lastly, we also have Ms. Chou, Group Director of Conservation and Urban Design. We will start off today's lecture with a short video before a panel discussion and a Q&A session with the audience, moderated by Dr. Limin, Director of Research, Center for Liveable Cities.
This has been a good opportunity for urban landers to continue our work with the Center of Liveable Cities on exploring issues related to land development policy and the way in which responsible land should be developed in Singapore.
I think it's wonderful that we have a group of people coming together to talk about what are some of the ideas they have to share about trying to make Singapore more car-lite.
I think it's for the public to understand that there are all of these different options, and one of the options may not completely be able to replace car ownership.
The Helsinki idea of transport as a service, mobility as a service, in an integrated way so that you don't need to rely on your own private car, you can use a whole suite of modes of transport.
Deal with the last mile. Meaning from the MRT station getting home, that link is important to people, and making that comfortable is an important criteria to help make public transit more convenient.
It gives a holistic view about from a viewpoint of land use as well as transportation and developers' needs, which is actually from the market needs.
Government will obviously lead from the standpoint of saying, this is what we envision from a master planning standpoint for this area to look like. We believed in creating complete streets, meaning the streets were not for cars. In fact, we put together a modal hierarchy that said the street is for the pedestrian first, transit second, because there's so many people taking transit, the bike third, and the auto last. And we started building our streets and retrofitting our streets to that modal hierarchy.
But actually to look at it from a more holistic point of view, which is the experience of the people. And by that, I would think that the connectivities, walking along Linkway and walking along bridges are actually not a very fun experience.
With less cars, with less parking lots, actually we can have a lot more spaces for people, and it will benefit the community more as a whole.
Increasingly more people are understanding that car sharing can be the solution to the weak link in the public transport.
There was a lot of great thinking, and now the challenge is to boil the best ideas to the top and figure out, how do we implement some of this? Can we pilot some of this in short order, 2-3 months? And then what we like, can we make it permanent within 2 to 3 years? So quick build, fast implementation is key.
welcome to everyone, and thank you for taking time off to join us on a Monday afternoon. So today we are very happy to share with you the outcomes of our joint study. We hope you enjoyed the earlier video, which captures some of the workshops and findings. We have distilled our findings into 10 ideas for Car-lite City. I think you probably would be able to find outside this auditorium, and also to download from either the CLC or ULI website. We have heard from the introductions that today we have a great panel to share views from the public sector, business sector, and expert and people sectors. And we hope to have a lively discussion today. And we'll round up with a session with the Q&A for the audience at the end of the session. So let me start off the discussion by asking Chou, Scott, and Mizah to share your thoughts. Why do you think it's important for cities to go car-lite, and why now?
I think we have seen in many cities now all over the world that cities that put people before cars help to create much more vibrant and people-friendly places, which are much more enjoyable for people to hang around in. And I think in Singapore, faced with our land constraints and a growing population, we know it's not possible and not sustainable to keep building more roads for more cars. This will just lead to pressure for more infrastructure, like highways and car parks, that will take away more space for such infrastructure and leave less space for people to enjoy a good quality public realm. So I think it's very important for us to look at other ways and other modes of mobility so that we can rely less on private cars in order that we can continue to grow as a city while maintaining a very good quality of life.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think in terms of the issue of creating more car-lite cities, I think to a lot of the research that we've been looking at, a lot of things with livability, it's really around the use of the right-of-way. And it's the fundamentals about how people get around, how people get from point A to point B in the city, how we move people and how we move goods. And as our urban environments densify, you get more people living in smaller and smaller amount of space, yet they still need to get from point A to point B. Now, this right-of-way that we've created, which is being really set up and dictated by the use and facilitation of moving goods and moving cars around the city, is now becoming limited. And it's a limited space, and there's a lot of pressure put on that space. And I think as centers start to densify further, the question really is, what is the best use of that right-of-way space? It's limited. How can we use that to create better livable communities, a better connection with the land use that's adjacent to it, whether or not that's residential, commercial, retail, F&B? How can we explore creating a much better urban environment that creates a conducive way in which people to interact, engage, and create meaning in their communities? And it's that kind of fundamental, I think, switch in terms of how these spaces are used, knowing that you're starting to move more to rail systems that move more people, bus systems that move more people around the community, and that they can then really look at the best use of our streets and what our streets should really be used for. I think this is something that you're seeing almost every major city in the world starting to really look at, is how can they create better use of these right-of-ways.
I guess at Participate in Design PID, we have always been a champion, right, for people-centric design and people-centric neighborhoods. And I think that is very much the essence of what is a car-lite cities, right? And I think it's also about prioritizing putting people first, right? When you think about designing cities compared to designing for cars first. And I think that is the essence as what we are trying to advocate for in terms of designing for more people-centric cities. And I think when you talk about, for us, we have been working a lot with focusing on education and working with kids, and how can we kind of create a greater awareness of designing spaces and cities that put people first. And I think that's what we are hoping to do, at least with showcasing the awareness of that.
Okay, thanks for telling us why car-lite, why now, and we are convinced that the trends that we see around are aligned to create a car-lite future for mobility in Singapore. And from our research on this topic, we found that it's very important to align vision for car-lite mobility, both in the public and private sectors. Kenneth, well, you would be the best person to tell us about the work that our public agencies have done regarding Singapore's car-lite vision. Will you share that with us?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and thank you, CLC, for the invite. I will take you through a bit of several slides to explain a little bit more about the car-lite vision for Singapore. But before I even start, I just like to talk a little bit about the word car-lite. It's a term that's been used quite recently, but if you think about a bit of history to Singapore, we have always been very aware of the need to manage our traffic, given the limitation of land, as well as our growing population. In fact, if you think back a little, just a bit of history, just post-independence in the 60s, population was growing. Our first AOS system came out in 1975. That was meant to control traffic around the city. ALS represents area licensing scheme. Thereafter, obviously, those who remember, road taxes went up, vehicle taxes went up in the 80s. The decision to build the MRT line was recognized very early. There was a great debate in the 80s. In fact, the decision was taken in the early 80s. The first MRT came online in 1987. So mass transit was an important mode of transport. A few years later, in 1990, the vehicle quota system, a more popular term is COE, where we regulated vehicle population growth, 1990. And ERP was turned on. First ERP Gen 2 was turned on in 1998. So if you look back in a bit of Singapore's history, a lot has been done. But it's only lately that we start talking about car-lite. Why so? A few of the initiatives we have not quite explored in the past, putting emphasis on walking and cycling, was not emphasized as much in the past. What are the imperatives going forward? No surprise, land remain very constrained, 12% of land. Going forward, like the challenges that our pioneers faced, we will expect to see increasing travel demand. In fact, by 2030, we expect something like 50% increase in travel needs over the next 14 years. And in order to meet that demand, we all know that it's not sustainable to meet this demand via road expansion. Demographic changes, elderly population, the emphasis on safer roads, safer streets becomes very important. So we aspire to create a culture eventually where everybody actively walk, cycle, and ride public transport. In fact, we use the term walk, cycle, ride. That's our tagline. Some mistake the ride as riding cars. They say, no, actually riding means riding public transport. But it's also about giving people options. Options to take the taxi when you need to. Car sharing is the other option that we are trying to create also, which I'll talk a little bit later. And at the end of the day, it's also create safe and inclusive environment for all. One of the key strategy that we have, and in fact, this is not new, it's about reducing travel. What better way than to reduce travel? And here I'm referring to travel distances. We know the jobs are mostly located in the city. The other major employment center is probably in the ends of Jurong. So what we're trying to do is work among the agencies to see if we can locate jobs closer to homes. That not just reduce travel distances, it makes walking and cycling that much easier. So we see this as a complementary effort. As we bring jobs and homes closer, the travel distances shortened, we're able to leverage on alternative modes. So you see some of these examples here that we're trying to, the word we use among agencies, decentralize, i.e. decentralize away from the CBD. So in all parts of the island, whether it's Jurong Lake District, where we are trying to position a second CBD, Woodlands North, Punggol North, Paya Lebar Central, where there's a good public transport facility, in other words, an MRT station, we want to see if we could enhance opportunities for some of these jobs to go there, because frankly, that's where most people live. Planning for public transit is very important to us. I touched briefly earlier that there was a great debate in the 80s about whether to build MRT line. Well, indeed, it was. It was a $5 billion decision then. It was the right decision. to expand the MRT line, to build the MRT line. And the debate then was whether it was to build an all-bus system or spend $5 billion on MRT line. And indeed, that decision was taken. And in fact, all efforts are now out for LTA to expand our line rapidly. And in no time in Singapore's history, in terms of building the land transport, are we building MRT faster. We find ourselves having to expand so quickly. By 2030, we expect 360 kilometers of rail line. Just give you some, where we are today is about 200 kilometers. That's 160 kilometers. And give you some perspective what that means in terms of the rate of growth. It's approximately equivalent to 1 kilometer of rail line every month. That's how fast LTA is building. So forgive us if we have too many construction sites causing disruptions and disamenity to many people on the ground. So we see this as an anchor piece. Building MRT lines for us is not just about building capacity. It's about building connectivity, accessibility, and it's about network resilience. In times when parts of that lines, like it or not, go down, there are other alternative ways for people to move around. So it's very important for us to build an MRT line and build it quickly. The bus system remains important. In fact, again, going back to the MRT debate, I think we come full circle because the question then was whether we had all bus or MRT. And now we decided that we need both. Both a good bus system as well as expanding our MRT line quickly. The government announced and committed a few years ago that built up a bus service enhancement program to put in 1,000 buses. We are on our way there. About 820 buses have been put in, with many services already being launched. And it's also about ensuring the regularity of arrival of our bus services, how our buses arrive at bus stops. So that we know is important to commuters. So we have put in place various models, including frameworks, including the bus service reliability framework. This is an important piece, the first and last mile. For us, it's about building a lot of infrastructure. Some may say it's too much, but it is an important piece. Your first and last mile refer to the first part or the last part of your journey, while the main part of your journey can be made via public transport, i.e. your rail or bus. So we have a walk to ride program. We're expanding at breakneck speed. We have about 20 kilometers of sheltered walkways today, and we expect to complete 200 kilometers by 2018. That's a lot of sheltered walkways to be built. And I think we're already seeing some of the fruits of this 20 kilometers. I think commuters have given us feedback that, rain or shine, they are sheltered, so useful. In terms of road safety, I think school zones, silver zones, catering to the young and the elderly remain important. The silver zone is something relatively new that we have implemented in the last couple of years. Very important for us to slow speeds down in places where traffic need not travel so quickly. I mean, it's not an expressway going through a residential estate. So we have done this in a few places, and we'll be expanding more in places, in particular giving priority to places with a lot of elderly. So we have started in Marine Parade. Red Hill is the other area that we have moved into, and many more coming on board. While the government continues to build infrastructure, we see a role for private sector to play. So early part of this year, we have required that developers need to submit a walking cycling plan. So what this means is each developer who has a plan to develop a building, we will work with them to ensure that they too have a walking and cycling plan that mirrors or link up with the public facilities, so that even the last of the last mile, commuters we get to ensure that commuters' journeys are done comfortably and safely. Other last mile improvements, including retrofitting some of our MRT stations, bus interchanges, to make sure they're barrier-free. You see a picture here, lifts on pedestrian overhead bridges. I must say, going up the pedestrian overhead bridge and coming down is not exactly the best experience. Our preference, if given a choice, would have been to walk through at grade. At grade is a technical term for surface. But we do have many pedestrian overhead bridges, and what we are trying to do is at least make good use of these facilities and put lifts in them. The other initiative to enhance safety is including this scheme called the Green Man Plus. We have done this for a few years. Essentially what it does is it gives the elderly who all hold an elderly card, senior citizen card, opportunity for longer green time when they tapped. This is interesting because some of the elderly has, in the course of giving us feedback, also tell us that they're worried that because they use the same card to pay for MRT rides and bus rides, they think that they may have to pay to call for more green time. So it's interesting because when we look at it, it is feedback to us, and we have obviously an education process is needed to teach them that actually it's okay. Go ahead and tap it where you need. So we're expanding this quite rapidly too. Providing bicycles facilities. 2 years ago, CLC invited us to talk about this. In fact, I was here at this very same stage talking about this. Glad to report that 2 years ago we spoke about Ang Mo Kio town being one of the first town to have cycling path. 2 years later, Ang Mo Kio town, at least the first phase of it, has been completed. And we aim to expand this and roll this out to every HDB town by the year 2030. Other initiatives you may have already heard in the press, including the new North-South corridor. And to share with you, we started with North-South Expressway. The thinking was a North-South Express simply because we needed more capacity from the north to south, something that mirrors the CTE, Central Expressway. But in the course of planning for this, designing for this, we made quite a fundamental shift and said that, well, at least one of the lanes should be dedicated to bus lanes. And along the corridor itself, which is on the surface of this corridor, we should have dedicated cycling paths. And this is another mega project that's in LTA books that we are working forward. Bencoolen Street, that's another example. Again, this was an opportunity. It was part of Bencoolen Street, as you know, was closed for a long time due to the construction of Downtown Line 3. And in fact, the original plan was to restore Bencoolen Street to what it was. And what it was 4 lanes of traffic. Again, during the course of planning and design, we made a fundamental shift again. We said we have to scale it down to 2 lanes. And even then, of the 2 lanes, one of the lane will be a bus lane. The remaining spaces that we freed up for walking and cycling. So hopefully, I'm quite confident we will deliver this next year, 2017, one of the projects together with the Downtown Line. Of course, as we expand our cycling facilities, we will need to provide more bicycle parking facilities as well, whether it's at the MRT stations, as part of working with developers, even to provide parking facilities at their buildings. I mentioned about walking, cycling plan. So these are end-of-trip facilities that we need to take care of, including working with developers to put in showers and lockers where feasible. Future mobility options. Some have asked, why are we trialing this? Are we replacing a car with a driverless car? Actually, what is interesting is we are quite interested in the autonomous technology, and we look forward to the time when there will be mass deployment. But until then, we want to be in the one of the countries which allows us to trial and test bed many of these technologies, because we know it's a technology that will come. And in fact, we have seen so in many other cities. So we have seen some of this, as you see some of these slides here, working in various, whether it's Delphi, Autonomy. This will help to ease some of our manpower crunch, including finding bus drivers. Eventually, I talk about expanding bus services, meeting the 50% increase. Where are we going to find all these bus drivers? So the time will come. And I think being there, knowing the technology and trialing them to make sure that it works for Singapore is important for us. Like it or not, there will be hiccups along the way. You may have also heard that Autonomy, there was an accident in one of the vehicles from Autonomy. So these are part and parcel of the trialing process. I think we just have to smoothen out these kinks. The day will come. Some put it as 10 years, 12 years maybe. That we will see mass deployment. So it's important that we continually keep in touch and test it in our hot, humid environment. Managing car use. I spoke about that earlier. Right from the early days, Singapore had been managing car use. Today, the vehicle growth rate is 0.25%, very low. But if you look at our absolute number in terms of car population, it's more than 600,000. It's pretty high. And 45% of households today own cars. But it also means that there's another 55% of households who don't own cars. And that represents the majority. And the majority would have we want to make sure that we build the necessary infrastructure, public transport, bus and rail, to serve them. At the same time, managing travel. ERP, I spoke about this in the introduction. There's opportunity now. You may have heard that we have called a tender, and in fact awarded a tender for the next generation of ERP, which is satellite-based technology. Well, it gives us capability to charge according to distance, and also charging according to the stretch of the length of stretch of congested roads. Also important for us to review our parking requirements. This is one key piece in the overall policy, to take into account the expanding rapid transit system. It just doesn't make sense for us to continue to have more parking when public transit is rapidly expanding at the rate I spoke about earlier. Going forward, it's interesting to note that amongst agencies, as we planned, we are planning for car-lite precincts. Some of the examples you see in this slide, in fact, the most notable one might be Tengah. HDB announced that, and it is one place where, when we envisioned it with HDB, we talked about not just less roads, not just having more bus services and all that. We said, can we walk and cycle everywhere? That was one key challenge. And in the discussion, I remember discussing HDB plan and say, you can walk everywhere, but can you cycle everywhere? Which means you need to plan for porosity, you need to plan for path, which allows you to do that. So these are quite transformational changes. Not something you see in HDB towns today, but something that we hope that in time, not just new towns, but we can also transform and rejuvenate existing towns towards this end. Many examples, I won't touch on many of these. Kampong Bugis upcoming, as well as Marina South. So with that, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kenneth, for sharing about the breakneck speed that our public agencies are forging ahead with our transformative Car-lite vision. Talking about aligning visions between public and private, maybe Mark and Mizah can share briefly, what do you see the roles of business and people sectors in this efforts?
I think it's right to look at the whole picture, between cooperation between business and agencies. In many cities right now, decentralization is something that's going on, and as people move away from the city centers to live and work, the existing city centers that we have, be it in my case Orchard Road, find ourselves in an interesting position where it's where the highest real estate prices are. It's where where people come to shop and play and have fun, and tourists come to visit. So developing a car-lite country, I think, means an opportunity for city centers like Orchard Road to follow suit. And and if everybody was car-lite, we wouldn't have to worry so much about parking spaces. There's a urban logistics program going on right now, I think, which is piloting, which allows, most of you have seen delivery vans clogging up the street, and so a modern urban logistics program would actually, take a lot of that pressure off the streets, and I think hopefully to give the streets back to the people, which would and also at the same time increase vibrancy of a precinct by having more public space, giving the streets back to the people, the cities back to the people, and taking it away from the cars. And a happier population and happier people means people will spend more money. And I think in a lot of cities which have gone car-lite or have had car-free centers, real estate prices in those areas have actually increased quite significantly. Notably, I think in Europe, in Copenhagen, and a lot of those cities, Times Square, Fifth Avenue in the States.
I guess when we look at the current way of doing planning and design of our cities, we know that it's very much a very top-down approach of the way we design our streets and our cities. And I think when we have that kind of approach, we tend to kind of forget the very vulnerable users of the public spaces. So in this case, we talk about seniors, we talk about kids. They are in a way very, very important when we look at using our everyday streets, and they are the vulnerable users, and we tend to forget some of their needs and some of the challenges that they have or as they experience. So in terms of the public and private and people partnership, I feel that we need to better understand, right, some of the needs that these vulnerable users are facing whenever they experience everyday life in terms of the everyday routine, going to work or going to school. But one of the main challenges that I think would be is how do we make very complex issues like transportation or even safety something that is easily accessible so that when we engage seniors or when we engage kids, they are able to understand, right? So one of the ways, for example, that we can do perhaps is to make the idea of street planning or road safety very relevant or very relatable to them, which it is to a certain extent, right? So we can ask questions like, oh, how is your journey from going to school to home, right? Is it a comfortable journey, right? Is it a safe journey, for example? What do you see as you go from the market to your home, right? And we realize as we ask these questions, we tend to be able to uncover some of these design issues or design problems that everyday people face when they go to do their normal routine. So I think it's really about putting people first compared to when you look at designing for your city or for your neighborhood instead of designing for cars first. That's what we used to be, I think, 50 years ago. And having that in mind, I think it's really about understanding some of the needs and challenges that these vulnerable users face. And I think we need to have them in the conversation in terms of what is needed or what is lacking in the design and the planning of our public spaces.
I just want to add a comment to that because actually our previous study that we did in Topayo with the bike networks and cycling, it was interesting because we looked at a couple different schools there, and then we also asked a series of questions about would you let your children cycle to school, and the majority of the people said no way because of safety issues. And then when we went out and actually looked in the community and looked at how you connect into the school, there was no way to actually cycle, even from the housing estate just across the road. To go from that place to the school was very dangerous to be able to cross. And then with all of the entrances into the school in terms of stacking of both the buses to drop off and the parents provided a lot of conflict. So that was something that we felt was a quick win in terms of being able to change that. But then the perception with parents and allowing their kids is an educational thing that needs to happen.
I'm moving on to the importance of getting some fundamentals right, as you can see in some of our ideas here. So I would like Chou and Scott perhaps to share with us some of the ways that good planning can help in reducing trips and to encourage active mobility, and to elaborate on some of these ideas. Chou.
As a land use planning authority, I think we take land very seriously. It's like how you plan money, we plan land, because there's so little of it. We have to make sure that we make very good use of it. So I think when it comes to planning, we take a very long-term and integrated approach. And land use planning and transport planning is very much integrated. We work very closely with LTA. And Kenneth mentioned earlier on the concept of decentralization. I think that's been something that's been guiding our planning for many years now. The idea is to really create employment centers and also amenity centers away from the city so that people can work and play nearer to their homes and reduce the travel to the city. And in some of these areas which we are planning afresh, I think we also have the opportunity to, plan from scratch and look at how we do things differently, putting in more bike lanes than we have in the city center, and looking at the design as well, because sometimes the devil is in the details. Attributes like lighting and greenery and how you design certain things and what fronts the streets actually make a difference to your experience of the living and working in that place as well. So all that's very important. And I think we have that opportunity in some of the new precincts to rethink some of these things. And also, I think with car parking provision, because when you start to plan less for cars, then I think your road sizes also become smaller. And there's, a whole new different way of we can start to look at things. And then I think at the urban design level, it's also important to look at how we design our streets and our public spaces to make sure that they are very enjoyable and very attractive for people to walk and to cycle and even to get to public transport nodes. So, for example, in all of our commercial centres and mixed-use centres, we would plan for a comprehensive pedestrian network, whether this is at the street level or whether it's above grade or underground. It's very important for us to design these well so that it's very convenient for people to get around, and especially between their transport nodes and their destinations. Kenneth talked about the last mile and first mile connection. again, like I said, sometimes it's really in the details. It's important that these are fronted by active users, by interesting shop fronts, and good quality and delightful public spaces as well, so that your experience is very enjoyable. How people design some of these things, sometimes the details are quite important. We can, for example, ask the development to provide a covered walkway. But if it's not barrier-free and there are many steps to navigate, or if it's cut up by a lot of vehicular entrances to the car parks, then your experience is again compromised. So I think Kenneth also mentioned the walking and cycling plan. I think in the step to raise standards, with URA and LTA together, we have recently introduced some new requirements for developments which are very public access oriented, of a certain size, to submit this walking and cycling plan as part of their development application, so that considerations for pedestrians and cyclists can be considered upfront at the early stages of the design. For example, to make sure that there are sufficient places for people to park their bikes, or there are supporting amenities like showers to make it easier for people to think about cycling to work, because that sometimes requires a mindset change. And also looking at some of the conflict points between cyclists, pedestrians and cars, particularly at your drop-off areas, entrances to the car parks, because the details can really make a difference to how you experience the city. So I think in this respect, we think that there really needs to be collective partnership across all agencies, departments and developers as well, I think, to make sure that we really have an environment that is conducive and attractive for people to walk and cycle.
Kenneth actually brought up some of this in terms of what is current being planned, and actually we've participated in some of these plans as well. And I think it's interesting because in Singapore, especially with the structure of the government, some of these plans can change fairly quickly. In the context of other cities, it's actually the whole discussion around Car-lite and the whole discussion around creating more pedestrian cycling friendly places and communities has come a long way in a fairly short time period. So I think there's been a lot of good things made. I want to touch a little bit on just the street itself. I mentioned at the beginning the right-of-way and the design of the right-of-way, and this shift of thinking about the right-of-way design for vehicles to move through it to people to move through it. And this is it's a fundamental shift where Singapore, most of the urban environment that's been designed and created in the last 50, 60 years has come from an automobile-centric environment. If you look at older cities, they've actually had a very historical layer of pedestrian planning that's influenced the way in which the center cores of the cities have really developed, where Singapore has really skipped that generation, and a lot of that old network has been removed from the city. So when you start to think about the design of that right-of-way, it's really, and you start thinking about the people moving through that space first, fundamentally, and you can see the intersection, the grid pattern there as an abstract in terms of the way in which you think about how people move from that grid. Chou actually mentioned in terms of the interface with the land use and the buildings, but if you start thinking about people first, then the whole network becomes more about moving at ground or at grade through the urban environment and creating the weather protection, the sun protection from getting easily and conveniently to that place that people want to go, which is a lot of that last kilometer. And I mean, I really challenge Kenneth and LTA to start using kilometer and not mile. I mean, this is a personal peeve of mine. We're not U.S. We are in a kilometer-driven environment. But so that last kilometer in terms of how you actually create that to public transit, how you create it to the bus station, and how you really think about people moving at grade. And that actually helps to think about cost, too, of the right-of-way. I mean, there still is a lot of proposals to take people up and over the street rather than stopping cars. And so cars, if they have a little bit longer inconvenience on the street, might be okay in certain areas. In other areas, it might not be, which is the diagram on the right in terms of how you actually move people and cars around. But you create these inner cores, which are really focused on people at easy and convenient, whether or not you're old or young, that you're in a safe environment. I mean, in our study, we did a part of the study was actually in Jerome Gateway District. And there we started to look at the streets and how you'd actually maybe do this in a quick and easy win. You heard Gabe Klein in the video talk about low-hanging fruit. And this is something that the current right-of-ways in Jerome is something that you could start to look at in terms of how you might break that down and how you might enhance the pedestrian of that, as well as the cycling routes, as well as creating then lanes for personal mobility devices and then for public transit. And then this ultimately goes into, you saw this in Kenneth's slides, this is the street design for Tenga, which is really then focused on the speed of what people move around the community and how we could create as many opportunities for people to get either walking, personal mobility device, cycling, public transit, or then automobile or trucks to get around the community, and really creating a very favorable environment to moving around. I guess the other side of it, so the people is one side, the other side that we looked at is the movement of goods, and which, I mean, the movement of goods in Singapore takes up about 25% of the capacity of the roads on any given day. And one of the ideas is to look at distribution centers that consolidate the goods. And the interesting thing about Singapore is that in the future, most of the goods are going to come through two places. One is the airport, and one is going to be the consolidated ports that are going to happen in Tuas. So you'll have the ability to really challenge the way in which goods come into the city and then are distributed around the city. And I think in terms of an idea, and I'll talk a little bit about some other cities that are starting to look at this in terms of a general idea that you have goods coming in, you then have a loop or system that goes to regional distribution centers, and those regional distribution centers then do the last kilometer of those goods into the neighborhood. So this is being piloted right now into the malls, into the regional malls, in terms of consolidation to a mall. It's also being piloted by the Singapore Post to lockers, so that instead of going to your home, that goes to a locker and you can go and pick up from a locker. But there is an opportunity to actually look at this even further, so that you consolidate to postal codes, so that all the goods, whether or not that's cold storage good or non-perishable goods, are actually in these regional distribution centers and then put onto trucks that are full when they go to deliver the item. So you don't end up with multiple type of deliveries, which you end up with many different vehicles delivering to the same address, potentially partially full, or having to make multiple trips in the day. So some of this is being looked at, like I said, in different aspects, but I think there's an opportunity, especially in the context of Singapore, to look at that as a much more holistic and regional type of approach. And the one thing that I will mention here is, I mean, Hyperloop is a company that we're, as AECOM, is invested into this company. But it was interesting. Hyperloop started as an idea of how to move people at 800 kilometers an hour on land. And it was to replace the high-speed train, essentially. It's a vacuum-type tube that brings people through. And what ended up happening was it went into more the logistics side. Rather than moving people, it's now turning out that there's a lot of port operators that are interested in taking containers off ships, dropping them to the Hyperloop, and then taking them into inland terminals. So it works well when you have a fairly long distance to go into an inland terminal. But in the context of Singapore, it would be very interesting to have a Hyperloop that circles around, and then you drop containers into these regional distribution centers. My last point here is really on the autonomous vehicles. I think, Kenneth, you mentioned in terms of the new trends with technology coming up. And I will say one thing, the autonomous vehicle doesn't change the amount of space cars take. It does make it a little bit more efficient. It makes it a lot safer. But at the end of the day, it's still about this mode share mix. And so I still push for the alternative ways of getting around.
Now, one of the 10 ideas that we were recommending is to drive change through research and pilots. Mark, here in Singapore, we have been doing some ongoing pilots on pedestrian nights for Orchard Road. Can you share with us what we have learned from this pilot?
So Orchard Road, we have done some trials and some, we talk about, for those, a little bit of background, as you know, Orchard Road is on average 4 to 5 lanes of traffic that runs from Pangolin Mall all the way down to officially to Plaza Singapura, so Dhoby Ghaut. I've noticed, I work on Orchard Road. I've noticed that most of the traffic on Orchard Road doesn't actually stop in Orchard Road. It shoots straight through to the downtown core, to the, to Marina Bay, to Bras Basah, that sort of area, down to the CBD. So, we have 4 lanes of traffic that doesn't really benefit Orchard Road very much. So we trialed 2 years ago pedestrian night, and when you give the street to the people, this is what you sort of get. We just did it on the first Saturday of every month. We did it from October 2014 until February 2016. We had we had about, I think, 8 closures, and we still do it occasionally, most recently for the Christmas light up. Again, giving the streets over to the community allows people to express themselves in different ways that they haven't been able to before, and it actually gives them some space to play on, right? And that definitely added to vibrancy. I think each closure we had an average footfall of about 50,000 people. There was a PR value, so to businesses and all that, of about $2.5 million. One of the other events, Orchard Road's signature event, is Fashion Steps Out. It's where we close the street for the world's longest fashion runway. We have had six of these events so far. And again, a total of about 5.9 million visitors over those events. Sorry, that was only one slide. But, it's a wonderful event. And then Christmas. So the slide on the right shows you what it normally is like with, cars and the Christmas lights. And the one on the left is the most recent one. Yeah, it's the most recent one where we close the street for the actual light up, and you can see that people are on the street with food trucks, and there's all sorts of things going on. So it's a much more of a community event. And I think this helps to boost street vibrancy tremendously. And this is more for Christmas on the Great Street. More of it, that's an overhead shot of the street being used by people.
Thanks, Mark. As Mark has shown, some streets, other than being merely links or channels to other places, actually lend themselves to become great public spaces if the opportunities are, given. And some of you in the audience may have been at Car Free Sunday yesterday to enjoy the great activities and street life at the Civic District. So Chou, this seems like a good segue for you to share on URA's great pilots on Car Free Sunday, which is now in its, if I understand, the second phase.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks for those who have joined us yesterday at Car Free Sunday. If you haven't, maybe you can join us next time. So anyway, I think we've been talking a little bit about our Car-lite vision. I think for us to get there, a lot of things need to, I think there needs to be some kind of a mindset shift, and things are not going to happen overnight. So for us, I think it's important for us to create opportunities for people to talk about and to also imagine what a Car-lite city can feel and look like. So I think Car Free Sunday really started out that way, as an opportunity for us to demonstrate and let people enjoy a car-free environment. So we started our pilot, our first 6-month pilot in February this year with a lot of support from LTA and a lot of the other government agencies as well. The intention is to close the streets around the Padang and CBD every last Sunday of the month and to invite people to come and walk and cycle and jog in a car-free environment. To be honest, I think this was a bit of a leap of faith. Before the very first event, we were all keeping our fingers crossed. We really had no idea how many people would show up because there was no registration, and this was an event that was really just open to the public. We were really quite pleasantly surprised and heartened to see people from all walks of life come and join us for the event. I think over the last few months, we've seen cyclists, joggers, brisk walkers, people on different mobility devices, rollerbladers, people who brought their pets, and people who came in all sorts of costumes as well. As you can see, the 2 dinosaurs there. It was also a very nice opportunity for people to come and enjoy our city, the Arts and Cultural Precinct, in a very car-free environment. We had a lot of partners working with us, a lot of community activities, yoga, bouncing castle, heritage tours, etc. The response has largely been positive. There was a lot of encouragement from various members of the community. So we were very happy to have relaunched our second edition just October last month, and then yesterday we had the second season. For this run, we've managed to extend the route a little bit longer to extend into the Teluk Ayer Heritage Area. This has, I guess, added a new area for people to enjoy in a car-free environment. I think that's been very well received because I think even among Singaporeans, we don't often go out and enjoy the city or don't have very much reason to do so. So I think it's been a very good opportunity for people to come and enjoy what our city has to offer. We've had very good community support from different community groups as well. Love Cycling SG, a community cycling group, actually built a car frame out of bamboo to demonstrate how much space a car would take up on the road as compared to a bicycle. And on the right-hand side, the guy in front is actually a resident from Bichan. He's built this bicycle train, he calls it, for I think over many years, using donated children's bicycles. I think he told me yesterday that he started building this because he used to ferry his kids to school. And then when more and more people donated bicycles to him, he decided to link them all up, and then he would ferry friends around the neighborhood, and he's very kindly offered to bring this down to our Car Free Sunday event and offer to ride people around as well. So that's very nice. So I think as a demonstration project, we've found that this has been very good as a collective effort between both government and the community to, I guess, help people imagine what an attractive environment a car-free place can be. At a more local precinct level, we have also been doing quite a lot of work with different community groups and stakeholders to help them realize temporary car-free zones. Some of these are regular weekend closures, for example, in Club Street, Circular Road, and also Kampung Glam, amongst others. Typically, the roads are closed for a few hours on a Friday and Saturday evening for people to come out and enjoy the city. A lot of these are actually initiated by the stakeholders. We just come in and play an enabling role. We have set up an interagency, group to help them, give them some assistance to get the necessary approvals, which is something that can be quite daunting when you're trying to start out something. So I think by and large, in many of these places, they have seen an increase in vibrancy and footfall in rental and also in sales. So I think this has had a very positive impact on businesses as well. And for people who feel like they have an idea about what they want to do on their street or want to plan an activity on their street but don't know quite where to start, we also have an initiative called the Streets for People program. What we do is we offer a very small seed fund to help people purchase the necessary materials that's required to close a street, and also, again, with assistance with getting some of the relevant approvals. So far, we have facilitated close to 20 different projects, both in the city and in some of the heartland areas as well. So we've had a good range of different activities. So most of them are one-day events, but I think we've also been quite heartened to see repeat events at some of these places like Keong Siak Street and Maju Avenue. We do hope that maybe over time some of these can evolve to be more regular programs, and that they'll also inspire other people in other communities to do similar projects in their neighborhoods. So I think collectively, I think these pilots have been quite a good way for us to get people thinking about what a Car-lite city can be like, and also to get people involved and feel like they can really play an active role to make positive change in their neighborhoods.
Mizah, your outfit, Participate in Design, has been working very hard on changing attitudes towards mobility, particularly with your work with communities and school children, as you shared earlier. Can you share with us what you have done in some of these workshops?
Okay. I guess I'd just like to begin by sharing a little bit more about what we do at Participate in Design. So at PID, we champion for a participatory design approach where we design together with people and not just for people. And I think it is with this idea of the with where we really want to emphasize and really want to celebrate, especially in developing solutions or designing and planning our cities in Singapore. And we really want to do that because we really want to enable everyday people, right, in shaping the built environment. So we have been working very closely with the community at McPherson, and I think this was an accident that happened in 2012 that happened between a little boy and a cyclist and a lorry. And I think that became kind of like an opportunity for us to come together to think about the idea of road safety and how can we design or how can we make McPherson a lot safer for the residents, right? As we started the project, we realized that this topic of road safety, right, is not only unique to McPherson, but it's also very relevant to other parts of Singapore, to neighborhoods, to cities, right? And we know that children is definitely one of the more vulnerable users of the public space. So back then in 2012, the formatting was a bit weird, sorry, it's okay. So we know back in 2012, we were very ambitious, right? We got together a group of residents, designers, various agencies to come together to think about how can we make the street a lot safer in McPherson, right? We did workshops, we did various pop-up events, just to kind of get the conversation going. And through all this conversation, we know that the idea or the topic of road safety, it became a very accessible topic for everyday people to share ideas, to share concerns, right? Whether you are a motorist, a cyclist, parent, or a senior, is something that is that you experience on a daily basis, right? So that became something that we thought was a good opportunity to get people together to start thinking or talking about solutions, right? Back in 2012, we were very ambitious. We wanted to make physical changes in the neighborhood, right? But of course, coming from the ground up, through a lot of red tape from the various agencies, it was very difficult for us to implement any kind of physical change. But having said that, we know that this topic of safety, right? It is a very important topic for us to start thinking about. And we know that if we cannot make any physical change, why don't we start from education, right? Start engaging kids and also parents. So that's when we came about and we asked these two main questions, right? We asked how might we bring children, parents, and teachers together to create fun solutions, right? For road safety and rethink how our streets are being designed and planned, right? So it's the idea of a very boring topic like road safety, but can we make it more fun, right? Especially when engaging or talking to kids and also parents. So the second question is how might we demystify very complex planning concepts, such as walkability, active mobility, to increase its awareness and relevance to children and also to parents. And I think I shared earlier about just talking the idea of the everyday routine, right? About how do you go from how do you travel, right, from home to school, right? And how is that journey like? Is it safe? What do you see? Or how do you does your parents drive you to school and why? And so on and so forth. So that became a very accessible topic for us to start talking and getting kids and parents involved in conversation about road safety and designing car-friendly or people-friendly cities and also neighborhoods. So we went on to develop an educational planning, participatory planning toolkit that focusing on kids and how can we get them together to start talking about solutions, right? So that's when the Urban Explorer series came about. So this is one of our first edition where we wanted to kind of experience or create a much more creative method of engaging kids and also parents, right? And the Urban Explorer series was really about teaching kids, right, using a game methodology for them to talk about road safety, to learn about road safety, to learn about how can we design more people-friendly cities and how can we reduce our reliance on cars. And one of the main reasons why we do not just want to focus only on kids, because as I think Scott mentioned, parents are very much influenced, right, in terms of whether the kids how do they behave in the public spaces. So we know that it's not just about the kids, but very much so the parents and also the educators. So there was the three main target audience that we were kind of focusing on when we were thinking about developing this educational participatory toolkit. So we then developed this game, right, called Save Your Street, right? And it's really again about which we kind of just launched it earlier this month. We were doing various workshops together with families and together with kids. Again, kind of exploring the idea of using the game methodology. So it's a bit like Monopoly, right? So when you play Monopoly, you do learn various concepts or elements like real estate or buying property. So this is similar in essence, right? So Save Your Street meaning in this game, cars are bad, right? Cars are evil in a sense, and they have to remove all the cars. I don't know whether Kenneth will be very happy with this. Cars are bad, and we have to remove all the cars before you can win the game, right? And it's also kind of inserting, although the overall topic is about road safety, right? But we do insert various knowledge about designing people-friendly streets, reducing the reliance on cars, kind of inserting various concepts like walkability, active mobility. Can we design for cycling, right? How can we as a pedestrian think about cyclists? Or how can we as a motorist think about cyclists or also pedestrian? Think about the different users, for example, the seniors, the kids, and so on and so forth. So although the main topic is about road safety, we do insert different, agenda of what we hope to create this greater awareness, especially when working together with kids. Um, and through all the various engagement, if you look at the first one, right, I think one of the main impacts, I think, by just playing the game, right, it takes you about an hour or 2 hours to complete the game. It's, I think, we do have, it's really about learning to work together as a team because it is a cooperative game, right? And it's also about trying to spread the awareness of the role of planners, architects, and also the traffic engineer. So, for example, one of the participants shared it fast, right? I learned that cities are very hard to build. So they know the complexity of, how hard is it for all the experts to be able to design a people-friendly streets. Then we also have, for example, this student shared with us, if I were to become an architect or designer, I can have, more ideas to make the street more people and eco-friendly. And I think this is one of the, I guess, the impact that we hope to achieve, but just very simple, but just playing a 1 hour game, for example, just some of the elements that we hope for the kids and also for the parents to be able to learn and gain from it. So the second thing, I guess, is also about the knowledge of urban planning, right? And also transportation and various planning concepts. Now, we do insert things like, car-free day, because some kids don't really know, okay, what exactly is car-free day? So we do have conversation about that, for example, using Q&A cards. They do learn also different modes of transportation, like buses, cycling, and so on and so forth. And I think I will share with you this quote, which I thought was really quite nice. And she said that I think Kenneth might be very happy as well. I learned how to love the public transportation. I appreciate the public transportation more as I learned that if we don't have them, our town will our city will have negative impacts on the environment. So I think this is something that they learn as well. I think finally, obviously, it's also about the importance of road safety and also the environmental sustainability. So if you think about just the idea of Car-lite, right, it's not just about Car-lite, but there are other concepts that we hope to kind of embed within the kids, the road safety, the environmental sustainability, social sustainability, designing for people first compared to for cars. And I think, for example, I think this kid shared with us that I learned to save the earth and reduce pollution by riding what he calls swag bicycles and not thug life cars. So it's about embracing a different lifestyle of cycling instead of bicycles. So I guess our objective of making cars evil did succeed to quite a large extent. For example, I learned that we should reduce pollution by riding more bicycles. And we should ride lesser cars. So I think these are some of the elements that we hope to kind of embrace, right? By, I think, although focusing on the idea of road safety, but trying to embed different concepts that I guess we all hope, at least for the next generation, to be able to influence. And I think it's we do play this game with families as well. So it's also quite interesting when, the kids are kind of saying such things and parents themselves, I mean, they own cars, for example. So in a way, kids can slowly also influence some of the changing of mindset, especially when you talk about road safety and also owning cars, for example. Yeah, so I think this is something that we are hoping to achieve by this game that we are hoping to do. And we are hoping to also to outreach more to schools as well, trying to kind of increase the awareness of Car-lite cities.
This is 5 questions for the panel as well as the audience. Question number 1. In Singapore, do we walk and move about on our bicycles on the right or on the left? Answer? Left. We're British. Okay. Anybody else have a view? So quiet. More views? Left? Okay. So in Singapore, we should walk on the left. Question number 2. How many of you walk on the left? Thank you. Question number 3. How many people in the public do you see walking and moving about on the left? Okay. Question number 4. How many people walk on the left or right and play with their handphone? No, that one everybody woke up. Okay, and the last question. If this is so, and it is critical to our smooth movement, what can you there, especially LTA and especially URA, and all those who draw up all the great plans, what can you do to make this happen? Because we can build great infrastructure, we can have billion-dollar plans, but simple things sometimes need to be addressed. And those are my 5 simple questions. Thank you.
You know, when mobile phones first came out, people would use them in the cinema all the time, right? And it's the same, you know, when I walk to Tangs through the underpass, and I'm always bumping into people who are kind of glued to their devices. I think as personal mobility and as we become a more car-lite nation, hopefully, I feel that people will succumb to social pressure and not be staring at their phones when they're walking around, just as they've stopped doing it in the cinema, over the years. But it does require timely reminders and maybe a campaign.
Actually, I've seen some cities draw lanes for phones on me. I don't know whether we want to get there, but
Well, a lot of it has to do with speed. So if you have two people walking and they bump into each other, they're not going to hurt each other. But if you have a person on their phone bump into a car, they're going to get hurt. And so I think a lot of the design part is helping to cater to safety in the urban environment so that if conflict does happen, person's not going to get seriously hurt. And then I think part of that's then social consciousness, which hopefully develops over time.
Maybe I will just back her up. I both run and cycle, both on the footpath as well as the park connectors. And I've been everywhere, and I noticed that when we have side-by-side cycling lane and a pedestrian lane, it never works. Nobody follows, all right? But in many of the park connectors that end park that put up a sign, shared path, keep left. I would say easily 95% of the people follow. All right? Simple statement. Shared path, keep left. I was cycling yesterday in the afternoon at Gimo Canal. Okay, there part of it is shared path, part of it is not. But even the part that is not shared path, they try to have this side by side. Everybody's keeping left anyway, because people find it is actually if you are slower, you just keep to the left. So I think I hope the LTA and everybody go and recce at Ang Mo Kio, recce especially at Tampines. Those paths side by side never work. Nobody follows. So why don't we just call a spade is not working, so just use a shared path. It is working.
Just had a quick question about bike sharing. I know there were some experiments done, and when you're looking at the last kilometer or other sort of connectivity with bikes and encouraging people to try out bikes, I know that's worked very well in a number of other cities, and just wanted to hear if you had comments on the possibility of expanding that in Singapore.
Thanks for that. In fact, recently we announced that we were going to do bike sharing in the Jurong Lake district sometime next year. It's something that we've been mulling over. We still call it a pilot because we want to see how it pans out, whether people will take to it. The advantage of bike sharing really it's unlike conventional bikes ownership, where it really allows spontaneous usage. That's one, and it's one way. You pick up a bike, you drop off at a station. So we're going to try this out next year in Jurong Lake District. In fact, we're going to try out, if I'm not mistaken, with about 1,000 bikes to begin with about 100 docking stations. Jurong Lake District, if you know, it's a fairly large area. It covers a bit of Jurong East, a bit of Jurong West, Taman Jurong, and so on. So yes, we are definitely going to try that out. Thank you.
My name is James. I was a project manager and engineer for a property development company. In the earlier talk by the gentleman from LTA, Mr. Kenneth, I believe, you mentioned that you are gently trying to persuade property developers to provide shower compartments in their beautiful high-rise buildings, office buildings. Now, I noticed that at number 1 Temasek Avenue, where the Millennium Towers are, without any suggestion by the government, we had done this about 20 years ago. And these are top-grade office buildings. And they attract the most beautiful multinational companies, very profitable companies, high-profile companies from all over the world. And I would like to believe that it's because of the office design and the shower facilities they had facilitated on every floor of the office building. Now, if you only could put that as a mandatory requirement rather than suggest to developers, because developers are very penny pinching people, and they want to squeeze the last drop of profit out of the office, out of the land, out of the plot ratio, and your suggestion may not really persuade them to provide such facilities. The problem with cycling to work, you go in, you go up, you reach your office and you're breathless, you're panting and perspiring, and you are socially unpresentable at, at 8:30, 9 a.m. So you need shower and all that, locker room, things like that. If you could make that mandatory, that will give a kickstart to cycling to work. Cycling back from work, you can bath in your club or in the comfort of your own home. That's not a problem. But arriving at your destination where you need to be very smart looking in the morning, I think the mandatory shower compartment is necessary in the toilet spaces. What do you think?
Okay,
You
thank
haven't
you.
made that mandatory, have you?
Okay, maybe we let the panelists give you an answer. Thanks, James.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
for the suggestion. I think we'll certainly study that. We want to start out with the walking cycling plan and see how it pans out. And you're right. I mean, the more progressive one today have done so. Yes. In fact, I'm aware Asia Square Tower, some of the newer ones have already done so. Secure facilities, including showers, lockers, and so on. Some of these facilities, in fact, we want to make it convenient. Just give you an example, not just lockers, but bicycle parking facilities. We think we would like it to be on the ground floor as much as possible because if you're going to put it anywhere else, there will be another set of requirement for them to bring up the lifts and what's not. Of course, there will be people who still want to bring their expensive bikes and live in the office workstation and all that. That's fine. So we would certainly look at that suggestion. In fact, I would go a bit. You mentioned about turning up unpleasant and all that. The other thing that's a personal comment that I've been thinking about is the way we dress. Do we need to dress in long sleeves attire and all that? So the dressing itself may well be something that as we move along, as the cycling culture grows, I don't know, we may not be dressed like this. We may be dressed in polo t-shirts or something else that allows us to facilitate cycling much easier. And we all go for meetings, and nobody's ashamed to be in a different attire. And these are all part of social pressure, right?
I'd like to add to that. Actually, I think shower facilities within office buildings are a commercial decision. We're currently retrofitting our office tower in Orchard Road, and we're putting in showers because we feel that if we want tenants and if the tenants desire shower facilities on their floors, then we better put it in, and we can charge more rent. Right? We can make more money. But I mean, on the other note about the cycling centers, I just came back from Santa Monica, and in the brand new shopping mall, there's a corner of it which is a cycling center, I think it's called, and they have shower facilities, bicycle maintenance facilities, and basically you can ride to the mall, you can park your bike there, they'll give it a tune-up for you. You can have a shower, be presentable, have dinner, and then go back and hop on your bike and go home. And I think that's what we're aiming for.
Raymond Kwok from Bike Towers and VC.com. It's for the panel. I think at this moment there's a debate about how we are going to incorporate people who have bicycles into the train, MRT, and moving along, and in various other places. I think that mobility is basically start from point A, which is maybe at the home, right? You jump in the car or you cycle, and then you might need to find a parking space along the way, and then eventually, you move from point A to point B. Can you share with us how I understand that this is it trial? I do not know whether it's going to be permanent, that you are able to basically move your mobility device into the train. There was a lot of suggestions how this can be implemented. It'll be interesting because I think this is going to be quite important aspect, how we're going to implement like Car-lite.
Hi, hello. My name is Danson. I'm from the Straits Times. I just have some questions for the panel. Two questions. Over the last few years, you've done really quite a lot to build up infrastructure, for cycling, for walking, for active mobility. That's how we've termed it. I'd just like to know if you can share with us if you have any data or details on, whether it's taken off, or what sort of metrics do you use to see whether people are sort of coming around to the idea. The second question I have is regarding e-scooters. With active mobility, I think, and also with the hot and humid climate, I think stuff like e-scooters, electric bicycles, sort of solve some of the problems that you have with sort of the strenuous nature of cycling. What sort of role does PMDs, personal mobility devices, play in sort of this transport ecosystem?
Okay, thanks, Denson. So just a brief summary. A question on the pilots on PMD and bikes in public transport, MRT and buses. Second, any data being collected on cycling and PMD take-up. And number three, what role do e-scooters play in this ecosystem of mobility devices? So invite panelists. Authority.
Thank you for those questions. Maybe I'll just take the first one about the use of bicycles as well as mobility devices on trains and buses. I'm quite happy we just announced this, I think, was it last week or a week before, where we will allow bicycles and mobility devices on trains and buses, not just during the off-peak, but throughout the day. So we have done, in fact, just prior to this, it was only during the off-peak. And why off-peak is because obviously that's when there are fewer people, less congestion. But we have decided that having done that, let's extend this throughout the day and see how it goes. So that's the approach we are taking in terms of, there's a bit of risk, yes. Those who use the trains during the peak hour would say it's congested. But we really hope that the behavior of those who would want to bring the bicycles and mobility devices on trains will bear in mind some of these congestion issue and don't rush into the train if it is already crowded. So in time, we hope that there's a bit of give and take. People understand. It's a bit like traveling with your stroller and pram. It does take up space, but and if we need to move in, people give way. So it's a bit of both on both sides, both parties. The other question about the role of PMD, I think PMDs is part and parcel, as we see, as of the mobility devices, whether it's cycling, it's another device to us. It's electric. Well, we have in a way to recognize that they are here to stay. It comes in many different forms. And we will just have to embrace it in one way or the other. But having said so, we might also have heard that we have put in place some rules to educate people how the safe and proper way to use them, whether it's keeping left on the path, traveling within certain speed limits on certain types of paths. I think that's important to us. Matrix, how we measure success. To us, I think our journey, well, I would say just started. In a way, if you look at the mode share for cycling, it's not very high. It's somewhere between 1 to 2% at the moment. It's not very high. We hope to move that to something closer to 5%. Still not a big number, but I think we want to start it off. And with all this hundreds of kilometers of infrastructure that I spoke about, we really want to see how these pan out and really encourage this as an alternative mode that people can embrace, and it's really about giving them an option. I say this to others too. It's you want to cycle. We are not expecting people to cycle to work every single day. It's providing you the option. I have colleagues who cycle to work one way, leave their bikes in the office, and then when they're well and ready, 2 days later they say I'll cycle home. In between, maybe they'll take a bus or take the train. It's about giving them that option, and the option to ride when they want to. And when they do, they know that they have a safe path and I've got a safe way to get home or to get to work.
Just on the personal mobility devices, I really feel that as a percentage of mode share will overtake cycling pretty quick because it's on demand, and for the within 2-3 kilometers, it's very convenient, and there's so many different options available for people to be able to use that. And just going back to the offices, we just redid our offices, and what we had put in, I had showers put in on every floor, plus I had personal mobility device parking in each floor. So you come in and you can actually put your scooter in, you can plug it in. We pay for electricity at work, so it's a good option for people in terms of being able to use.
I'm really very impressed with what MOT is doing, transport is doing, and also the speed at which URA and you all are rolling out all those stuff. But I just wonder whether we could do parallel learning and also speed up the learning and implementations along the same way. I look at what you are doing for Bengaluru Street, and I live in Clementi. You are expanding the Clementi Road to don't know how many thousand lane. I think it's at least 8 lane on both sides. It's going to look like LA, Los Angeles actually. So I just wonder aloud whether I could lobby LTA to seriously think about converting some of the lanes that you are on Clementi Road into cycling, because I think a lot of people go to the Poly and also the NUS campus, and if they live on the condominiums along that Bukit Timah area, it will be perfect for them to ride bicycle. But if you go and build that, I think 4 lane on each side, there's 8 lanes, it will be impossible for people to do that. So that's one quick aspect. The second part is even when you are doing in Ang Mo Kio and Tampines and other places, Jurong Lake, I just wonder whether in the HDB heartlands and also other places, as and when you all have sort of discovered a new and better way of doing something, could you all also quickly implement in the other existing housing estates and roads, rather than wait until you finish everything completely, then it will be another few more years before the rest of the places get outfitted. Right? Because in the meantime, I'm in healthcare, I'm from healthcare, I'm really, really concerned about accident, and I think you are beginning to see a lot more accidents of this of nature on the side. So the sooner we can make the footpath and the roads safer, a lot less people will go to the hospital with broken bones and all these things. And one other aspect is, of course, old people, their bones are very brittle. And often you just knock them down a little bit, they're gone. This is the beginning of the end. So this thing should not be taken too lightly. I think we need to speed up the learning and speed up the implementation of all the safer and better features. So that's an appeal, it's not a question. Thank you.
Slogan the LTA had just a year ago, or even early this year. I was driving along the PIE past Adam Road, and then this beautiful pun you have announcing your upsize for the pie, right?
Upsizing the pie, yeah.
There's a beautiful pun, by the way. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. The PIE was, in fact, it's a completed project. The upsizing, like it or not, has been completed. It was a project that we embarked on a few years back. That sign was up there. I don't think the sign is there anymore because it's completed. But going forward, our initiatives are quite clear. I started my very first slide, walk, cycle, ride, and these 3 will be our priorities. So it's very clear to us. Whether we will still continue to build roads, we will. The North-South corridor is a new road, but I mentioned about how midway we changed that thinking and transformed that. Mr. Liak spoke about Clementi. We are also mulling over putting a bus lane on Clementi. Why? Because again, the number of buses that runs down Clementi is a lot. So we do need to give priority to various mass modes, and certainly I think our walk, cycle, ride is indeed our priority going forward.
Thanks, Kenneth. I would like to round off the session by asking the panelists each to just share in one sentence what would be a quick win for Car-lite in Singapore. Maybe starting with Mizah.
I think for me, I guess focusing more on the idea of education and starting from the young. I think it's important. I think the idea of Car-lite Cities is a lot about changing our mindset. So I think for us, we really want to start, to get the kids to spread the message and start from young. And I think that's one of the ways to kind of have impact.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say, a pedestrianization of Orchard Road, diverting traffic around to the side roads would be awesome for the precinct.
I think doing more pilots, because I think that itself is a quick win. Sometimes when we try to do big projects, they take very long to implement, and also big changes are sometimes quite scary. So I think small incremental quick wins pilots, I think they're a good way to demonstrate positive change, to get people to, build mind share.
I like what Mr. Liak spoke about, which is about replicating successes. I think that's important. And when we do that, we must take into account the needs of the people working with businesses, developers, the 3Ps, and public, obviously, understanding their needs and how they use the facilities.
I agree. I think it needs to be easy to implement and convenient, and I'd really focus on the last kilometer. The last kilometer, do those quickly.